Let's talk to Faria Khan. She's a GP. You wear a part covering. Let me just start by putting that to you, Faria. Tommy says, hello, welcome to the programme. Tommy says that this is a barrier and this is to subjugate women and divide Muslims. Are you being subjugated?
No, not at all, not at all. It's entirely my choice, and nobody has forced me to do it. And the reason why I observe the term that we use is called parda, is the covering of the body and the hair and the outer parts of my face, is because it is part of my religion. It is one of the covenants of Islam, and that's why I follow it. And it also gives me a sense of identity, and I really feel safe and protected wearing it. So nobody is forcing me to do it. I do it entirely of my own choice. And I think this is a misconception that is out there a lot. Lots of people look at women covered, either their face or their bodies or their hair, and they think somebody must have forced her to do it. But they actually do not cross that barrier to approach that woman and ask that woman, like you are doing to me now, and asking me whether I have been forced to do it.
Is the reason, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Khan, is the reason that people don't approach you to ask you about it because it's quite an intimidating thing? If you can't see someone's face, then it's quite scary to actually go and speak to that person.
But unless you've tried it, you wouldn't know. Because somebody has to cross that barrier. Or there are other ways of communicating. Sometimes you can speak to people who have got their face covered through other people, and you can find out there's so much knowledge and information about Islam that you can find out on your own as well if there are certain misconceptions in your head. But the thing is, until you get that knowledge, it's a prejudice, isn't it? It's a preformed prejudice that you have already imagined everyone in their head that any woman who is covering her face or who's wearing a certain kind of clothing or covering is forced to do it. And most of the times people think that they're forced to do it by men, by either their husbands or their fathers or their brothers, and it's absolutely wrong.
Okay, so you're a GP. You wear your veil out of choice. You wear a hijab, not a niqab, right?
No, what I do is I wear an outer garment on my body. I also wear a hijab which covers my hair as well as outer parts of my face, which includes the chin and the ears and everything.
Right.
I do not cover my face when I'm at work because it is my choice, and I think it is very important for me to communicate with my patients.
So you think that it's actually quite important for people to be able to see your face when you're dealing with them as a patient, the doctor-patient relationship?
That is my absolute personal and professional belief.
So would you support then?
Sorry?
So would you support then this idea that BRI have banned people from wearing the veil?
That's a different argument altogether.
Well, it's kind of in the same ballpark.
No, because I will give you my reasons. As I said, parda, observing parda, is part of my religious belief, okay? If a woman, either she is a nurse or a doctor, decides to cover her face at work as well, I'm not going to tell her or interfere in her religion. I am not going to do that. And I think it is a slippery slope if you start doing it. We all have freedom of religion or expressing our religion or observing our religion in this country. And it is a huge privilege. It is a huge privilege to be able to do that. Now, if that observance involves me covering my face or somebody else covering their face, and that causes hindrance in their treating the patients, communicating with the patients, then it is whatever the hospital decides is down to that person or the contract between the person and the hospital. So I'm not going to be commenting on that.
Okay, isn't one of the teachings of Islam that when you go to another country, you kind of adopt the cultures and you integrate and that kind of thing?
I integrate a lot. I think, I mean, if I look around, there are loads of Muslim women who are playing a valuable role in this society. They are out there in the communities, helping out neighbors, helping out elderly people. They're out there working and contributing to the society, and especially if their work involves teaching, being doctors, being nurses. They are valuable members of society, and this is part of your integration. You make friends with your neighbors. You go out to have tea or coffee with other mothers at school that you have become friends with because of your children.
Well, I've heard this morning, Dr. Khan, I've heard this morning from people who, I had one text from someone who said her neighbour wore a veil and she couldn't communicate with her, so it became a barrier for her to actually just become friends with this lady.
Well, I can't comment on any personal messages that you receive, but in my opinion, I have never found there was any barrier between myself and the rest of the society. I have had so much respect and love from my patients, absolute respect and love from my patients, and I respect them for that as well, that they have accepted me the way I am. And I've never had any prejudice from my colleagues. The same applies to my neighbors, my other friends. There are children who go to school with my kids, and I've become friends with those women and never faced any prejudice whatsoever.
Okay, let me flip it a little bit then. I don't think anyone can deny that we're living in slightly difficult times in Britain for people who are of the Muslim faith. We see the rise of racist organisations. If you look over in Greece, Golden Dawn actually killed someone just the other day. We're seeing a rise in the right wing. Are you not separating yourself and making life just a bit more difficult for yourself as a Muslim by separating yourself and standing out from the crowd?
No, not at all. The thing is that if the right-wing organizations that you have just quoted, the way they behave, it's up to them. Okay? It's not, I wouldn't change the way I am in response to somebody behaving the way that they are behaving. And if they are behaving irrationally, that doesn't mean that I stop doing the things that I believe in. All of us, I mean, especially Britain, I mean, it's such a huge multicultural, multiracial society. We all learn to respect each other's views, and we all learn to live with each other.
Okay, but what about when those views come up against each other? What about when someone has a view which is, I don't want you to cover my face, particularly when you give me medical treatment, and then it comes right up against the view that says, I want to wear my veil when I'm giving you medical treatment. Those two things cannot exist together.
You are absolutely right. You're absolutely right in quoting that example. So a patient has a right, I think a patient has a right to actually say that I'm not comfortable being treated by a doctor or by a nurse who I cannot see the face of and I can't communicate properly. And it should come from the patient.
And you think equally the health professional has the right to say, I won't take my veil off?
Now, the health profession has a decision to make then. And I think I can't comment on those people who are actually, because I as I told you, I do not do that. So I can't comment on anyone who covers their face and why, what they're going to do in that situation. But I think you can come up with a mutual understanding and come to a decision. But I think patient has an absolute right, if they want to be treated by somebody who's not covering their face and they think that it hinders in communication, they have a right to do so.
Dr. Faria Khan, it's a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Khan. She's been a GP for 11 years. She wears a part covering of a veil, and she says her friends, her neighbours, her patients never had an issue with it.
To keep up to date with the latest videos from the Ahmadiyya Muslim Youth Association, subscribe to the MK UK Videos YouTube channel. Or, for more information about the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, log on to www.alislam.org.